Oftentimes, one of the biggest mistakes that I see investors make is they choose a loan for the lowest interest rate, and they often don't have a long term plan in place for what they're trying to do from property to property. So, in today's ultimate guide to real estate investing for residential homes, I am going to go into the three different types of investment properties that you can get into. We have short term rentals, which would be your Airbnbs. Then we have mid-term rentals, which would maybe be your traveling nurse rentals. And then you have the long term rentals, the old boring keep it, hold it, and collect that rent. My name is Amy DeBusk, and I am a certified mortgage planner. And what I'm known best for is finding really niche products for investors like you who are savvy and ready to scale your portfolio. So, a lot of times, what I see is investors not understanding what loan types are out there for the different strategies that they might have. So let's start with the short term rentals, just because they're the shortest. I'm short too, but this is about how long the tenant is going to actually stay in the property. So a short-term rental would be, you be marketing it on Airbnb or VRBO, and the idea with these short-term rentals is that you'd be able to make more money because you're having multiple people come and rent your property and you're charging more per night. And for vacation destinations, it works beautifully. Even actually, I have a client who turned their current home into an Airbnb, and you would never believe that this Airbnb crushes it. So, this Airbnb is off of it's Highway 50 in Rancho Cordova, California, which, if you know the Sacramento area, Rancho Cordova is just a suburb. It's not a very, you know, desirable place for, especially vacationers to go. However, it is right on that 50 corridor. It is 20 minutes from Sacramento, and it's also about an hour from Lake Tahoe. And they've had this Airbnb now for about 5 years. And they, on average, make about $5,400 a month. Now, this Airbnb, I've really followed him through the years because it's just been really neat to see him grow as an investor. And one of the things he said about Airbnbs is that they're really labor intensive. So you really need to get your team together for the Airbnb. And when I say team, it might not even be the team that you're thinking. So you're going to want a cleaning team. You're going to want automation. You're going to want to make sure that your have the lock boxes in place and have it so seamless that these people can book online with you, and then you have systems in place where they can access the keys, and where you don't have to have much interaction with them, so to speak. So an Airbnb is a tricky type of investment property to get financed when you're purchasing an investment property and you know it's going to be an Airbnb. So if you have your 25% down, or you can totally income qualify, meaning you can fully document your income, you know, truth be told, you're just going to say that this is going to be a investment property. We're not going to be saying that it is an Airbnb, because underwriters, unless you already own the property and you have a track record of collecting rents through a short-term rental, and you can show 12 to 24 months of, you know, repeated rents coming in, stability, underwriters do not want to hear that you are buying this house to get an Airbnb, to rent it out as an Airbnb, because that just screams instability. So on a conventional loan, if we're purchasing it and you know that you're intending to Airbnb it, we're going to qualify you based on long-term rental. So we're going to qualify you based on whatever the long-term rents are in the going area that you're buying the house in. And typically on a conventional loan, you're going to put down 25%. Now, if you do not have the documented income needed for a conventional loan and you want to go with a DSCR loan, debt service collateral ratio loan, if you're purchasing the Airbnb, it would be the same thing. So if you're purchasing an Airbnb or purchasing an investment property that you intend to use as an Airbnb, we're still going to use the long-term rents in the area to qualify the property on the DSCR loan, because DSCR is a lot like conventional in that respect. A conventional loan and a DSCR loan are both going to want to see that you have a track record of having Airbnb rental income coming in. So, in a nutshell, if you're purchasing an investment property, um, the tricky part with the DSCR loan and purchasing a house like an Airbnb with a DSCR loan is that, you may be thinking that you're going to get twice as much in rents on an Airbnb as you can for a long term rental. Well, the whole pretense of a debt service collateral ratio loan is that the rents are equal to the mortgage payment. And so if you're buying a really high end rental property, it might not pencil out as a DSCR loan. Now, we do have loan types that are DSCR loans that offer half to one ratios. The rents can be half as much as the mortgage. So, again, the rents can be half as much as the mortgage. So that would mean that you'd have more flexibility. Now, in those types of DSCR loans, they are going to require a higher FICO score and they're going to require 25% down. A lot of DSCR loans, if you're an experienced investor, you only have to put 20% down. Now, if you are refinancing a Airbnb and you have a track record of, collecting that short-term rent over the last 12 to 24 months, it's not a problem. We can do the DSCR loan and we'll just show them what you've got for rents coming in, and they'll want to see that track record. So, on a DSCR loan, just to clarify, that is not an income documented loan. So, we don't take any tax returns or pay stubs or W 2s. We're only taking rental income. We're going to show the rents and then we're going to show your credit. We're going to do a credit pull and then assets. So, that's on a DSCR loan in a nutshell what the documentation is required on. And the lowest credit score on a DSCR loan that is available is 660. Now, on a conventional loan, where it's full doc, where we're going to get 2 years tax returns, and we're going to get, if you're employed, we're going to, want your W-2s and pay stubs. And then we're also going to want to see the rental. Maybe we want to even see the rental agreement, and we might even at some point need to see a track record of the rents coming in and seeing that in some cases. But typically it's just 2 years tax returns, and then we're looking at that Schedule E. And the tricky thing about the conventional loans is when you start to scale and you start to get multiple investment properties, a lot of times you write off a lot of your income on that Schedule E, and that's when it becomes a little bit more difficult to qualify on a conventional loan, unless you're being super conservative on your tax returns or you make other income that allows you to qualify for the mortgage in traditional senses. I will tell you this though, you'd be shocked at the DSCR loans that we offer. Their interest rates can be even lower than a conventional loan sometimes. So, the nice thing about the DSCR loan is that because it's considered a non bank loan or a non QM loan, meaning it's not governed by the powers of be, it's not governed by like the Fannie Mae and the Freddie Mac guidelines, traditional banking guidelines. we can do prepayment penalties on the DSCR loans, and that can really get your interest rate down lower. So there can be these are the prepayment penalties that I quote normally on a DSCR loan. So there's no prepayment penalty options, which your interest rate's going to be the highest on a no prepayment penalty DSCR loan. And there's 2-year prepays, 3-year prepays, 5-year prepays, and they even go up to 7-year prepays. What I see the sweet spot being for the investor and for the interest rate is a 2 to 3 year prepayment penalty. When I talk to my investor clients and I say, okay, well, we're saving a half a point in rate, but you're going to get a 3-year prepayment penalty. Usually they're okay with the 3-year prepayment penalty because they can see that they're going to hold it for 3 years. Now, even if you decide that you take that 3-year prepayment penalty, and let's say, oh gosh, 2 years down the line, for whatever reason, maybe somebody comes knocking on your door and just gives you an offer you can't resist and you decide to sell the property. Well, if you are selling the property on a 3-year prepay on year 2, it's a scale. So it's called a 3-2-1 prepayment penalty. So the first year, it's a 3% penalty based on the loan amount. The second year, it's a 2% penalty based on the loan amount. And then the third year would be a 1% penalty on the loan amount. And then, of course, the fourth year it's 0. So if you're on year 2, let's say the loan amount's $200,000, you pay 2%, that would be a $4,000 prepayment penalty. So not the end of the world, not ideal though. So there you have it. You can get a lower interest rate on a DSCR loan and have the ability to buy multiple properties, not have to income qualify, and get a lower interest rate, sometimes even lower than on a conventional loan. Because on conventional loans, there is no such thing as prepayment penalties. Typically, on a conventional loan, the interest rates are in general about a half a point to 5/8 of a point higher on an investment property than they are on an owner occupied. The only time when that's not true is when you have a very low loan to value. So loan to value, just the amount of the loan compared to the value of the house. So let's say you've got lots of money and you just want to do a conventional loan. The 40% down payment would give you the lowest interest rate on a conventional loan. That's what we give merit to. The most we give merit to is a 40% down payment. And in that case, you could see yourself getting a really nice interest rate that would be lower than a DSCR loan. So there is my segment on the short-term rentals. So Airbnb short-term rentals. What's next? The next would be a midterm rental. A lot like a short-term. That would be like for your traveling nurses. So for traveling nurses, you can go to furnishedfinder.com and advertise your rental for traveling nurses. And the positives of having a traveling nurse is, number one, they're usually never home. They usually have really good credit, and they usually make really good money. So it's typical for a traveling nurse to want to rent out a space for 13 weeks at a time. So a lot of my investors that are going for this strategy, they're looking to buy houses in places that are close to hospitals or major cities where it would be attractive for a traveling nurse to want to rent. Again, it is going to be a little bit labor intensive because, every 13 weeks, you're going to be changing out your tenant typically, unless they extend their stay. And the rules would be the same on qualifying for a home loan with a traveling nurse, if you've got a track record and you're refinancing a house, and I can see 12 to 24 months of you having this shorter term rental income coming in, we can use that to qualify you in both DSCR and conventional financing. And let me clarify, it would be 2 years track record for conventional, and then DSCR, they're a little bit more lenient. It'd be 1 year of a track record showing that rental income coming in for traveling nurses. Now, if you are buying investment property with the intention of doing this midterm rental where it's the traveling nurse rental, you're still going to be limited we're going to be qualifying you based on the long-term rents that are in the going rents area. So how do we determine what the long-term rents are? The appraiser does. Okay. So we can see online, Zillow's, in some instances, Zillow can be a very good indicator as to what the long-term rents are going in the area. However, when we order the appraisal on the property, you are going to get a rental survey, and that's for both a DSCR loan and a conventional loan. And on the rental survey, the appraiser is going to determine what the going rents are, and that is the amount that we'll be able to use to qualify you on a purchase for the DSCR loan. And also for a conventional loan, I mean, if you need the rents to qualify you on the conventional loan, typically what we can do is we can use up to 75% of the rents to offset the mortgage on an investment property. Now, if you're an experienced investor and let's say that the rents are even higher than the mortgage and there's actually some rental income, if you're an experienced investor, we will qualify you based on the whatever the rents are against the mortgage and give you that credit for the actual income that property is going to be potentially throwing off. Now, those are short-term rental and then mid-term rental. And then we have long-term rentals. So the traditional, boring, long-term rental, you're buying the rental property to get a tenant in there and hopefully have them for a nice long time. I've seen people rent out homes long-term up to like 9 or 10 years. So that is also going to be the same strategy as conventional or DSCR. It's just that on a long-term rental, it's pretty vanilla. What you see is what you get. The rents that you see online or the rental survey that you're getting is probably going to be about what you're going to get for rents. Now, on the traveling nurses and the Airbnbs, you could get way more than what the long-term rents are, but there is a lot of risk to those short-term rentals too, because it's tied to how well do you manage the property? How well do you market the property? How good of an area is it for, traveling nurses or short-term rentals for Airbnbs? And sometimes, know until you get into it. So I should say this, you probably know this if you're an experienced investor watching this video, but you do need to, you're going to pay taxes. You're going to pay income taxes and capital gains taxes on any investment property. So if you are selling this property as an investment property, you are going to pay capital gains taxes. The only way that you would get out of paying capital gains taxes on an investment property is if you had personally lived in the property 2 out of 5 years. So let's say you turned your current home into a rental property and you held it for 3 years, you could sell it at that point and not pay capital gains taxes because you can prove that you've lived in the property for 2 years. I actually had a client, this was a long time ago. He owned about 9 or 10 rental properties, and he lived in a very nice house in El Dorado Hills. And I remember he telling his wife, he's like, honey, we're moving into the house. that's 3 bedroom, 2 bath in Citrus Heights for 2 years, so that we can eventually sell it. And they did. They lived in that rental property for 2 years, and then they sold it. So that is a strategy, for, um, not paying the government capital gains taxes. So let's get back to our types of investment properties. So the third type is your long-term rental. Okay. And when you buy a long-term rental, you're thinking of, you're going to hold this and own it for a very long time. Hopefully, you're going to pay it off and be able to collect those rents and have those rents help you with your retirement. Now, if you're trying to scale long term rentals and buy multiple properties very fast, there is a strategy called the BRRRR strategy. What does BRRRR stand for? BRRRR stands for buy the house, rehab the house, rent the house out, and then refinance it, and then repeat, do it all over again. So on the BRRRR strategy, this works in certain areas in the United States. In 2026, there are areas where it does not work, and I will tell you one of the areas where it probably doesn't work real well is in California. Um, One of the areas that works fantastic is Memphis, Tennessee. So I have a group of investors and 2 teams that do BRRRRs, in Memphis, Tennessee. So the BRRRR strategy, why that works and why it's easy to scale is because there are private money lenders that will lend experienced investors sometimes 100% of the purchase price and the rehab to um, get started. So I'll give you an example. I have a client right now who is buying a $115,000 property. The rehab on it is going to be about 25,000, and the end value after the rehab is done, the house is going to appraise for around 150,000. And so they're able to finance um, the purchase price and the rehab, and then when we finally come around and refinance it after the house is rented out, I'll be able to give them up to 75% of the after repair value. So that's when they're going to pay off the private money lender. And in most instances, when they take out the final loan, and that's the DSCR loan, it's called a no seasoning DSCR loan. That is when they do end up bringing in some money to the close of escrow. It's very rare that you'll do a BRRRR where you don't have any money out of pocket. I mean, and I have seen it done, but in most instances, you're probably going to come up with, in this instance, he's going to come up with probably between $20,000 to $22,000 total, because you got to think about it. When you're using private money to buy a house, well, number one, he's going to pay the private money fees up front when they lend him the money for the rehab and the purchase. And the private money lender, it can be anywhere from 4 to 5 discount points. So in his instance, this private money lender was pretty good deal actually. They only charged him $3,600, so he paid that out of pocket, and then they gave him the entire amount for the purchase price and the rehab. And then we're waiting for the rehab to be done now. And we're waiting for him to rent it out, because it's key in a BRRRR. You want to get the house rented out before you do the long-term takeout loan, which is the loan that I would do, which is a no seasoning DSCR loan. Because on the no seasoning DSCR loan, you can get up to 75% of the after repair value if you have the house rented out. If you don't have the house rented out, you can only get 70%. So I had one a couple months ago where it was taking them a little bit longer to rent the house out after the house got rehabbed. And we kind of made a judgment call that she was paying way too much in interest to the hard money lender, because hard money lenders, private lender, whatever you want to call it, you're going to be paying 12% interest on that money while you're rehabbing it and while you're trying to get it rented out. So we decided that we were just going to take less and do the 70% loan to value and get it refinanced so we can get it into a lower interest rate. And just to give you an idea of like what you can expect for DSCR loans with like a 3-year prepayment penalty right now, they're in the mid sixes for interest rates. So not too bad. Um, I will say this, in Memphis, Tennessee, the bigger problem is the loan amount. So on the DSCR loans, very few lenders will lend on a DSCR loan that's less than 150,000 on the loan amount. There's some lenders that will go to 75,000. They're few and far between, but the no seasoning DSCR loan, when you're trying to do it really quick after the rehab, that minimum loan amount needs to be, well, they don't call it a loan. They don't look at the loan amount. They actually look at the value, the after repair value. The minimum after repair value needs to be 125,000. So sometimes it's on the cusp, and that's where it can be really risky, because if you're buying a house where the after repair value might come in at 120,000 instead of 125,000, well, guess what? Now you're stuck with that private money loan, and we got to make a judgment call. Are we going to do a fix and flip and just flip it? And that's sometimes what happens. So that brings me to fix and flip loans. So a BRRRR gone bad, I should do a video on that. A BRRRR gone bad is where you can't rent it out, and maybe you can't get financing on it for whatever reason, but you've rehabbed it. Well, now you've decided you're going to flip it. So you'll put it up for sale after the rehab and just sell it, and cut your losses and pay the capital gains taxes on it. However, I would not recommend, if you know that you want to do a fix and flip on a property, and goes back to, the theme of really know what your strategy is. And there's different strategies for different properties and different areas for that matter. But really knowing what strategy is going to work the best for which area and which property is where you're going to win. And that's where I see the mix-ups and the bloopers and the, oh shoot, now what happen is when you don't understand what strategy works for the property that you're buying. So if you know for certain you want to do a fix and flip, and you've got the team, the rehab team, and you know the area that you want to go into, and you're like, right, I'm definitely not going to rent these properties out. I'm fixing them, flipping them. Well, in that strategy, please don't use private money. Private money is very expensive. And there is a type of financing called fix and flip money, where a couple major differences on the fix and flip money. Number one, the interest rates are a little bit less than on private money. The bigger thing is that they give you a line of credit, and you don't have to pay on the total line until you actually use that line of credit. And once you become an experienced flipper, and I would like to define experienced flipper. So the definition of an experienced flipper, in the eyes of any lender, is that you have done 3 or more fix and flips in less than 36 months, and that we can document those fix and flips by, homes that you've held title to, and see your track record and see your rent roll, and show, how much you bought it for, how much you rehabbed it for, and how much you sold it for. 3 of those in 36 months. Once you get to that status, that's when we have several different banks that will give you a line of credit, and you can go out and buy multiple homes and get them rehabbed, and you only pay for the money that you're actually using. The line may be $1 million, and maybe you only have 200,000 on it. You're only going to pay the interest only payment based on what you've used so far. And also, when you get into this arena and you become an experienced investor, what's really cool is that I have banks that really like to continue the relationship and do repeat business with you. And the deals just get sweeter and sweeter the more deals you do, and the better the relationship you have with our bank and me, of course. But they will give you a little bit lower of an interest rate. They give you more credit. Just there's a trust built up, which that's not like that way in a traditional bank where, the Bank of Americas of the world or Wells Fargo's. Anyway, so there you have it. That's just high level fix and flip, what that would look like if that was your strategy. If you would like to book a strategy call with me, I would love to talk to you. It's free. 30-minute strategy call. You can log on to talkingwithamy.com. That's talkingwithamy.com.